The first shot cracked through the cold Montana dawn as Silas Adler crumbled to his knees in the muddy street of Redemption Creek, the blood from his brother's body seeping into the earth beneath him. It was 1876, and for Silas, time had just stopped forever. "Jacob," he whispered, cradling his younger brother's lifeless form as townspeople began to gather. The outlaw who'd gunned down Jacob was already racing away on horseback, nothing more than a disappearing cloud of dust. Someone had called it a fair fight, but Silas knew better. His 17-year-old brother hadn't even cleared his holster. "Someone get the sheriff," a woman called, but Silas knew it wouldn't matter. Nothing mattered anymore. By sundown, they'd buried Jacob in the small cemetery on the hill overlooking Redemption Creek. Silas stood alone after the others had gone, his hat clutched in his hands, his eyes fixed on the freshly turned earth. "I'll find him, Jacob," he promised, his voice barely audible above the evening wind. "And when I do, he'll pay for what he's done." The next morning, Silas packed what little he owned, saddled his horse, and left Redemption Creek behind. He'd been a cattle hand, a horse trainer, occasionally a bounty hunter, skills that would serve him well in his hunt for a killer. The only photo he had of his brother rested in his breast pocket, close to his heart. In his saddlebag was a poster with the face of Tom, the Snake Wilson, the outlaw who'd murdered Jacob over a card game accusation. For 2 years, Silas tracked Wilson across 5 territories. The hunt became his only purpose. He no longer thought about the future, there was only the present moment, the next town, the next lead. People who met him saw a man hollow inside, his eyes reflecting nothing but the drive for vengeance. At 30, Silas had become a ghost who walked among the living. When autumn winds began to sweep across the Wyoming Territory in 1878, Silas arrived in the small settlement of Promise Valley. It was little more than a trading post with a saloon, general store, and a handful of homes, nestled in a fertile valley that had attracted a few hardy homesteaders. He tied his horse outside the saloon and pushed through the swinging doors. The place fell quiet as he entered, a common reaction to strangers in small towns. Silas ignored the stares, approaching the bar with single-minded purpose. "Whiskey," he said, placing a coin on the worn wooden surface. The bartender, a heavy-set man with a gray mustache, slid the glass toward him. Passing through, Silas downed the whiskey in one swallow, looking for someone, Tom Wilson. The name sparked recognition in the bartender's eyes, but he shook his head. "Haven't seen him in these parts." "You're lying," Silas said, his voice calm but edged with steel. "I've been tracking him for months. His last known location was 50 miles south of here, headed this way." A voice from the corner cut in. "Mister, whatever business you have with Wilson, I suggest you let it go. Man like that, he'll put you in the ground before you can blink." Silas turned to face the speaker, an older man nursing a beer. "He already put my brother there." Before the conversation could continue, the saloon doors swung open again. A woman stepped in, drawing every eye in the room. She wore a simple blue dress, her chestnut hair pulled back in a practical bun, but there was something commanding in her presence. "Mr. Davis," she called to the bartender. "My order from Cheyenne come in yet? Just this morning, Miss Violet. It's at the store, ready for pickup." She nodded her thanks, then noticed Silas. Their eyes met briefly, and something unfamiliar stirred in him, the first feeling besides vengeance he'd experienced in years. He looked away quickly. "Madeline Violet," the bartender explained, catching Silas's glance, "runs the medical practice here. Closest thing to a doctor we've got for 50 miles. Silas didn't respond, but he was aware of her approaching. "You're new," she said simply. There was no question in her voice, just observation. "Just passing through," Silas replied, signaling for another whiskey. "Looking for someone named Wilson, apparently," the bartender added, earning a sharp look from Silas. Madeline's expression changed almost imperceptibly. "Tom Wilson," Silas turned his full attention to her. "You know him, I know of him," she said carefully. "He came through Promise Valley about a month ago, left a man half dead." "Where did he go?" Madeline studied him. "What's your name?" "Silas Adler." "Well, Mr. Adler, I don't make a habit of helping men who look like they're hunting others to kill them." Silas reached into his coat and produced the worn, wanted poster. He's a wanted man. Murder, robbery, assault. I'm just bringing him to justice. Are you a lawman? She asked skeptically. No, then it's vengeance you're after, not justice. Silas said nothing, knowing she had no reason to help him. He finished his second whiskey and turned to leave. Mr. Wilson headed north, she said suddenly. Toward the mining camps in the mountains, but that was weeks ago. He could be anywhere by now. Silas paused at the door. Thank you, Miss Violet. Mr. Adler, she called after him. Winter comes early in these mountains. If you're heading north, you're riding into trouble. He looked back at her. Trouble and I are well acquainted. Silas spent the night in the small boarding house at the edge of town, planning to leave at first light. But Promise Valley had other ideas. He awoke to a raging storm, wind and rain battering the windows with such force the glass threatened to shatter. The boarding house owner, Mrs. Peterson, shook her head when he came downstairs with his gear. No one's going anywhere today, Mr. Adler. This storm's been brewing for days. Could last another 2 or 3. Forced to wait out the weather, Silas spent the morning in the saloon, nursing a coffee and studying his map. The north route would take him through treacherous mountain passes that would soon be snowbound. If he didn't find Wilson before the first heavy snow, he'd lose his trail until spring. The saloon doors opened, bringing in a gust of wind and rain, along with Madeline Violet. She shook the water from her coat and spotted Silas. Still here, Mr. Adler? She asked, joining him at his table without invitation. Storm's keeping me, he replied, folding his map. Perhaps it's a sign you should reconsider your journey. Silas looked at her directly. I don't believe in signs, Miss Violet. What do you believe in? She asked, surprising him with her directness. After a long moment, he answered truthfully. Not much anymore. I need help, she said, changing the subject abruptly. One of the homesteads outside town, the Collins family. Their youngest has a fever that's not breaking. I need to get out there, but the creek's flooding and I can't cross alone. Silas frowned. There must be someone else. There isn't, she cut him off. Most men are securing their properties or livestock. I'm asking you, Mr. Adler, because you look capable and you clearly have nothing better to do while waiting for the storm to pass. Her frankness was surprising but not unwelcome after years of people tiptoeing around him. You don't even know me. I know enough, Madeline replied. Will you help or not? A child's life may depend on it. Something in her determination reminded Silas of his mother, who'd never taken no for an answer. With a sigh, he nodded. I'll help you reach the Collins place, nothing more. Within the hour, they were on horseback, Madeline leading the way through the driving rain. The normally placid creek that cut through Promise Valley had swelled to a rushing torrent, but Silas knew a technique for crossing with horses in high water. They made it across safely, though not without difficulty. The Collins homestead was a modest cabin with a small barn, smoke rising from the chimney despite the rain. A worried-looking man rushed out to meet them. Doc Violet, thank God you've come. Ellie's worse, she's burning up something fierce. Inside, Silas hung back as Madeline attended to the 6-year-old girl. Her movements were precise, her manner calming as she spoke to the frightened parents. She mixed medicines from her bag, applied cool compresses, and gave firm instructions. Silas found himself watching her hands, capable hands that seemed to know exactly what they were doing. Your friend can wait in the kitchen, Mrs. Collins suggested to Madeline. I've got coffee on the stove. He's not Madeline began, but Silas had already followed Mrs. Collins to give them space to work. Hours passed. The storm continued to rage outside, rattling the windows. Silas sat at the kitchen table, drinking coffee and listening to the occasional instructions Madeline called out to the parents. Eventually, she joined him, looking tired but relieved. She'll be all right, Madeline said, accepting the coffee Mrs. Collins poured for her. The fever's breaking. We'll stay until I'm certain she's stable. When darkness fell, the Collins insisted they stay the night rather than risk the crossing in the dark. Silas found himself on a pallet near the fire, listening to the storm and the occasional quiet movements of Madeline as she checked on her patient. Near midnight, she sat beside him on the hearthstone, her face illuminated by the dying embers. Thank you, she said softly. We wouldn't have made it here without you. Silas nodded, unsure how to respond to gratitude after so long living with nothing but his mission. "May I ask about your brother?" she questioned gently. Silas stiffened. "How did you know? You said yesterday he already put my brother there." "I assume you meant Wilson killed your brother." For reasons he couldn't explain, Silas found himself telling her about Jacob, his quick laugh, his talent with horses, how he'd planned to start his own ranch someday. Words he hadn't spoken to anyone spilled out in the quiet cabin. "So now you hunt Wilson," Madeline said when he'd finished, "and after you find him, what then?" "I haven't thought that far ahead." "You don't believe in tomorrow," she observed. It wasn't a question. "Tomorrow's just another day to track him down," Silas replied. "There's more to life than vengeance, Mr. Adler." "Not for me, not anymore." She studied him in the firelight. "I lost my husband in the war. For years I thought life had ended, but it hadn't. It had just changed course." Before Silas could respond, a soft cry came from the bedroom, and Madeline rose to check on Ellie. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a muddy landscape and a sky washed clean. Ellie's fever was gone completely, and the grateful Collins family insisted on feeding them a hearty breakfast before they departed. The ride back to Promise Valley was quieter. The creek had receded enough to cross safely, and they reached town by midday. "I suppose you'll be leaving now," Madeline said as they parted at the boarding house. "First thing tomorrow," Silas confirmed. She nodded, her expression unreadable. "Safe travels then, Mr. Adler." But fate intervened again. That evening, as Silas was checking his supplies, a young boy burst into the general store. "Miss Violet needs help. There's been an accident at the Miller farm, wagon overturned." Without thinking, Silas followed the boy to Madeline's small clinic, where he found her hastily packing supplies. "Mr. Adler," she said, surprised, "I didn't expect to see you again." "I heard there was trouble. Need another pair of hands." Relief washed over her face. "Yes, it sounds bad. Multiple injuries." They rode hard to the Miller farm, where they found chaos. A wagon had overturned on a steep hill, pinning the father beneath it and throwing the oldest son against a rock. Madeline immediately began treating the son's head wound while directing Silas and the farm hands to carefully lift the wagon off Mr. Miller. The next several hours blurred together as Silas followed Madeline's instructions, helping stabilize fractures, fetch water, and eventually transport the injured men back to her clinic in town. It was well past midnight when they finished, both exhausted and splattered with blood. "You have a natural steady hand," Madeline observed as they cleaned up. "Ever thought about medicine?" Silas shook his head. "Never stayed in one place long enough. Because of Wilson?" "Yes," she sighed, setting down her towel. 2 years you've been chasing him. Has it brought you any peace?" "I'm not looking for peace," Silas replied. "I'm looking for justice." "And after that, will you just keep riding until there's nothing left of you?" Her voice held a sharpness he hadn't heard before. "Your brother wouldn't want that." Anger flashed through him. "Don't presume to know what my brother would want." "I know what it's like to lose someone you love," she countered. "To want to stop living because they have. But that's not honoring their memory, Silas. That's wasting the life you still have." Her words struck too close to a truth he wasn't ready to face. Without another word, Silas walked out, intending to leave Promise Valley at first light, storm or no storm. But that night, lying awake in his room at the boarding house, Madeline's words echoed in his mind. For the first time in 2 years, he allowed himself to imagine what would happen after he found Wilson. Would killing him or bringing him to justice really change anything? Would it bring Jacob back? Would it fill the emptiness inside him? Morning brought no answers, but it did bring news that changed everything. "Heard you've been asking about Tom Wilson," said the stable hand as Silas prepared to saddle his horse. "Word just came in from Rimrock. He was there 2 days ago, headed this way. Seems he's got business with somebody here in Promise Valley." Silas froze. "Who? Don't know, but if I was looking for him, I'd wait right here. Word is he's planning to arrive for the Founders' Day celebration tomorrow." The realization hit Silas like a physical blow. If Wilson was coming to Promise Valley, there was no need to track him through the mountains. The killer was coming to him. Instead of riding out, Silas took a room at the boarding house for another week. He spent the day walking the town, memorizing every street, alley, and building. If Wilson was coming, Silas would be ready. That afternoon, he encountered Madeline outside the general store, her arms full of packages. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither spoke. "I thought you'd be gone by now," she finally said. "Plans changed." He hesitated, then added, "I owe you an apology for last night." Surprise flickered across her face. "You don't owe me anything, Mr. Adler. You were right about some things," he admitted. "I just wasn't ready to hear them." She studied him. "Something's happened. What is it?" Silas hesitated, then told her what he'd learned about Wilson's imminent arrival. Alarm replaced surprise on her face. "Silas, you need to tell Sheriff Briggs. If Wilson's coming here, the sheriff won't be able to handle him," Silas cut in. "Wilson's killed lawmen before." "So your plan is to wait and kill him yourself?" Madeline shook her head. "That's not justice, that's an execution. It's what he deserves." "Perhaps," she conceded, "but is it what you deserve, to become a killer yourself?" She set down her packages and faced him squarely. "The man I've seen these past few days, the man who helped me save lives, deserves better than to throw his future away on vengeance." "What future?" Silas asked bitterly. "I don't believe in tomorrow, remember?" Madeline's expression softened. "Then believe in me," she said quietly. "I believe there's more for you than this endless hunt. I believe you're a good man who's lost his way." Her words caught him off guard. For the briefest moment, he saw a possibility he hadn't allowed himself to consider: a life beyond vengeance, perhaps even a life that included her. But the moment passed quickly. "I need to finish this," he said firmly. "One way or another." Madeline picked up her packages. "Then at least promise me you'll speak to Sheriff Briggs. Let the law handle this properly." Reluctantly, Silas agreed, though he had little faith in Promise Valley's elderly sheriff. Nevertheless, he spent the afternoon in the sheriff's office, describing Wilson, his crimes, and the information that he was headed to town. Sheriff Briggs took the threat seriously enough to deputize Silas and 2 other men, preparing for Wilson's possible arrival during the Founders' Day celebrations. But Silas knew it wouldn't be enough. Men like Wilson didn't simply walk into a trap. The day of the celebration dawned clear and crisp. The small town square was decorated with bunting, and tables laden with food lined one side. A band played on a makeshift stage, and children ran laughing through the crowd. Despite the festive atmosphere, Silas remained vigilant, his eyes constantly scanning the perimeter. Midday came and went with no sign of Wilson. Silas began to wonder if the information had been wrong, if Wilson had changed his plans. Then he spotted Madeline across the square, speaking with an elderly couple. She wore a blue dress similar to the one she'd worn when he first saw her, and something about the sight of her made his chest tighten. As if sensing his gaze, she looked up and their eyes met. She offered a small, tentative smile that he found himself returning. Perhaps when this was over. The thought was interrupted by movement at the edge of town. A rider approached slowly, his face obscured by the angle of the sun. Silas's hand moved to his gun as the figure drew closer. It wasn't Wilson. The rider was a young man, dust covered from the trail. He dismounted near the sheriff, speaking urgently. Sheriff Briggs listened, then quickly made his way to Silas. "Got word from Rimrock," the sheriff said grimly. "Wilson was there all right, but he left with 3 other men, members of his gang. They're planning something bigger than just showing up here." "What do you mean?" Silas demanded. "Bank robbery, most like. They were asking questions about the mine payroll that comes through here twice a month." The sheriff's weathered face creased with worry. "That payroll arrived yesterday. It's in our bank vault now, set to be distributed tomorrow." Silas's mind raced. They won't wait for the celebration. They'll hit the bank when everyone's distracted. He scanned the crowd, suddenly alert to any unfamiliar faces. They could already be here, watching, planning. As if to confirm his fears, a woman's scream cut through the festive noise. Heads turned toward the bank at the end of the main street, where 4 mounted men had appeared, bandanas covering the lower half of their faces. "That's them," Silas said, already moving. "Get these people to safety." Chaos erupted as the outlaws fired shots into the air, sending the crowd scattering. Silas pushed against the panicked tide, trying to reach a position where he could see clearly. Through the dust and confusion, he caught sight of one man, taller than the others, directing them with confident gestures. Tom Wilson. 2 years of hunting, and there he was, less than 50 yards away. Silas drew his gun and moved forward, using the fleeing townspeople as cover. He was close enough to hear Wilson's voice, barking orders to the others. "Get that money loaded up. Anyone tries to be a hero, put him down." One of the other outlaws emerged from the bank, dragging someone with him a hostage. With sickening clarity, Silas recognized Madeline, a gun pressed to her temple. "Got this one trying to hide in the back office, boss," the outlaw called. "Doc, by the looks of her bag," Wilson laughed. "A lady doctor, well, ain't that something? Bring her along, might need patching up if this gets messy." Cold fury rose in Silas as he watched them forcing Madeline onto a horse. His vengeance had just become a rescue mission. He moved quickly toward the side of the bank, using the buildings for cover. Sheriff Briggs and his deputies were pinned down behind water troughs across the street, exchanging ineffective fire with the outlaws. Wilson's gang had nearly finished loading the money when Silas reached his position. He took careful aim at the outlaw holding Madeline, waiting for the perfect shot. Just as he was about to squeeze the trigger, Madeline's eyes found him in his hiding place. A flash of recognition, then determination crossed her face. In a sudden movement, she drove her elbow into her captor's stomach and dropped from the horse. The distraction gave Silas the opening he needed. He fired twice in rapid succession, taking down the outlaw who had held Madeline and another who was turning to grab her. Wilson spotted him immediately. "Adler," he shouted, recognition clear in his voice. "Finally caught up, have you?" Silas moved into the open, gun trained on Wilson. "It's over, Tom, for Jacob." Wilson's eyes narrowed behind his bandana. "The kid from Redemption Creek. Hell, I've killed so many I can barely remember them all." The casual dismissal of his brother's life fueled Silas's rage. He stepped forward, finger tightening on the trigger. "Silas, no," Madeline called from where she'd taken cover. "Don't become what he is." Wilson used the distraction to fire, the bullet grazing Silas's arm. Pain seared through him, but he maintained his aim. Wilson turned to flee, spurring his horse toward the edge of town. In that moment, Silas had a choice. He could take the shot, a difficult one with Wilson moving, but possible. He could end it here, fulfill his 2-year quest for vengeance. Or he could let the law handle it. Madeline's words echoed in his mind. "Then believe in me." Silas fired, not at Wilson, but at his horse's flank. The animal reared in pain, throwing Wilson to the ground. Before the outlaw could recover, Sheriff Briggs and his deputies had surrounded him, guns drawn. It was over. Not the way Silas had imagined for 2 years, but over nonetheless. He lowered his gun, suddenly aware of the blood running down his arm. Madeline was at his side in an instant, her doctor's bag somehow still with her. "You're hurt," she said, examining the wound, "but it's not serious. Come to my clinic, I need to clean and bandage this." Silas looked past her to where the sheriff was shackling Wilson's hands behind his back. "I need to make sure he's not going anywhere," Madeline assured him. "The trial will come and justice with it, but right now you need medical attention." Strangely, he felt no urgency to confront Wilson further. The man seemed smaller somehow, less significant than the phantom Silas had chased for years. Instead, he allowed Madeline to lead him away from the scene toward her clinic. As she cleaned and bandaged his wound, Silas sat in silence, processing what had happened and what hadn't. "You didn't kill him," Madeline said quietly, as if reading his thoughts. "No." "Why?" Silas met her eyes. "Because you asked me to believe in you." A soft smile touched her lips. "And do you believe in me?" "Yes," he admitted. "And maybe I'm starting to believe in tomorrow too." 3 weeks later, Silas sat on the porch of Madeline's small house, watching the sunset paint the valley in gold and crimson. The trial had been swift. Wilson and his surviving gang member were sentenced to hang for multiple murders, including Jacob's. Justice had been served, not through Silas's vengeance, but through the law. Madeline joined him, handing him a cup of coffee before taking the chair beside him. "Letter came for you today," she said. "From the territorial marshal's office." Silas raised an eyebrow. During the trial, the marshal had been impressed with how Silas had handled the situation, suggesting he consider a position with the law. "They're offering me a deputy marshal badge," he confirmed after reading the letter. "Based in Cheyenne, but covering this whole region." "Are you going to accept?" Madeline asked, her voice carefully neutral. Silas looked out at Promise Valley, then at the woman beside him. In just a few weeks, his world had transformed. The hollow man bent on vengeance had found something he never expected: a future worth living for. "I'm considering it," he said, "but I'd need to be sure I had reasons to return to this area regularly." A smile spread across Madeline's face. "I believe that could be arranged, Deputy Marshal Adler." "I haven't accepted yet," he reminded her, "but you will," she said confidently. "Because you believe in tomorrow now." Silas reached for her hand, feeling the warmth of her fingers entwined with his. "No," he corrected gently, "I believe in us." As the last light faded from the sky, Silas Adler realized that his brother's death had set him on a path that, against all odds, had led him not to an ending, but to a beginning. The cowboy who hadn't believed in tomorrow had found something far more precious: a future, and a woman who had taught him how to embrace it. In the years that followed, Silas would build a life with Madeline in Promise Valley, returning between his duties as a marshal to the home and family they created together. The wanted posters in his saddlebag were replaced by letters from his wife and, eventually, drawings from their children. And each night when he returned, Madeline would meet him with the same words that had changed his life: "Believe in me." And he did, every day, for all the tomorrows they shared.